Hi everyone. I want to thank you so much for being so gracious about the fact that I had to postpone the Halloween Addicts Anonymous meeting number 3 class, the Boo Boo Crew banner. And just want you to know I'm doing better. Not 100% yet, but much, much better than I was last week. So thank you so much for being so kind, for all your comments, your prayers, your thoughts, and your concern for me and my husband. I would just encourage you to be safe, wear your masks. I did all that, but I still managed to get sick. So just be extra vigilant now. I know it's easy to become kind of used to what's going on and a little bit lazy about things, but I just encourage you to be vigilant. So anyway, what I thought the best thing that I could do for you is to record the class and make it available on Facebook and also on my YouTube page for those of you who have everything all prepped and you want to paint it, and I don't want us to be behind. So this video is for that purpose, and that way we don't have to try to reschedule and find a date that this class will fit in. So I hope you're okay with that, and just want to warn you, it may be a video that takes me a couple of days to record, because I'm still kind of get tired after a little bit of work, and I don't want to overdo because I don't want to relapse. Anyway, so with that said, let's get started painting our Boo Boo Crew garden flag. So here you go. One last look at the finished product before we start working on the yours and mine unfinished. So let's go and start work. We are going to work on this background here a little bit, and of course we're going to use my favorite thing, Punchinello, and we are going to use Purple Cow and Warm White. So those two colors you need to get out. So Purple Cow, come on out, and some Warm White. I'm really glad that I'm feeling well enough to do this. So, and let's find a brush we like to stencil with, and we're just going to put some random dots of Purple Cow all around the background, wherever there's some negative space. You want to just scrub on or stencil on or pounce on some dots to break up that background. Okay, they don't have to be real dark or opaque. Light is fine, and if they're different, that's okay too. But just get wherever there's some open space, scrub some dots in there. You might have really light. That's okay, because I'm going to come back and pick up a little Warm White and do some little lighter ones. And I'm not putting them all this way or all this way. I'm kind of trying to vary the direction that I have my Punchinello, so that I get, you know, kind of random dots, not little soldiers all lined up. And you probably hear me say that a lot. You don't want little soldiers. Oh, thought I was going to dry brush there for a minute. So this could take a little while. You don't have to hurry. One of the advantages here is that you can stop the video and do what we're working on, and then come back and turn it back on and go to the next step. Let's get in here. I'm going to try to teach myself not to do really tall pieces because they're kind of hard to get on camera and on my painting table. So I hope you guys are all doing well. I think I want to put a few more over here. Almost done with this. And those are going to be bright. And that's perfectly fine. And I'm going to put a little bit here and there around the lettering as I can get in it. If you get color on the lettering, it's okay. I would probably stop at the stitch line if you're doing the garden flag. And when we get all done with this and you go to hang your flag, what you're going to have to do is you can take like the back end of a brush or something and gently open that pocket because it is going to be kind of stuck together. Oh, getting there. Slowly but surely. This is a lot of surface to cover. I'm trying not to hurry. Too much. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up just a little bit of warm white on my palette, and it's kind of nice. You can see my palette on the side there, and just mix it with my dirty brush so I get a lighter value of purple cow. And in these larger spaces, I'm going to add a little bit lighter random dots in the background. So just to lighten up some areas a little bit. And again, they don't have to match the dots that are behind them. It's okay. Okay, we're getting there. Let's do a little bit more here. And let's get some up here around the letters. Doesn't have to be a lot. And this is something you can always come back and add more of if you decide to, but I like it because it just breaks up that background a little bit. So we're done with our Punchinello. And now what we're going to do, and this is going to take a while, is we are going to float shading around our ghost and around the band-aids with dioxazine purple. So, let's see, let me find my diox. There it is. You want to blend this out really well. And it's not going to be a perfect float. You don't need a perfect float. It'll be okay. So let's just, see, I even have to cover up my brushes. There. I'm just gonna, and trust me, you don't want this to be a perfect float. It would take you forever to do a perfect float. And I'm gonna pull this back a little bit. To get around that little thing. It actually, the polyester canvas here really accepts floats really well. I was pleased with it. And I'm going to go every other one because otherwise I'd wipe out the shading that I did around the other one, the one above it. If you're having trouble floating, I want to just remind you that when you float, your flat brush should be kind of more laying kind of flat, or you know, right next to the surface. You know, with your liner you want to stay up on your tip, but with floats you want to be more in line with the surface, and that's, I found, has helped a whole lot to get floats. And here again, these are not going to be perfect. It'll be okay. Let's see if I can get this guy up here. Once you get going, it shouldn't take too long. But here again, the advantage, you can stop the video. Still a little bit of congestion. It's going to show up in my voice every once in a while. So, I'd hum or sing for you, but it's not going to work. So I may continue at regular speed so that if you're painting along, I'm not getting way ahead of you. But I may just pop in a little bit of music here because I can't talk that much. Normally, if this was Facebook Live, I'd be looking over and seeing what your comments are and saying hello and trying my best to keep up with the comments. It's a little hard sometimes. But since not, let's enjoy some music. and closer by the minute here. Sometimes some of the things we have to do are kind of tedious and time consuming, but they add so much to the finished product that we just have to bite the bullet and get them done. You can see already that helps to pop the doctor off the background. So this has been time well spent. Just a couple more places. And we can call this finished. All right. Oh, one more place here. Okay, I think we're good. I thought we were good, but I see one place. But it's not really going to matter because it's going to have grass under it or over it. All right. So finally, we get the background stenciling and shading done. We can move on now. So our ghost was painted with warm white. And what we're going to do first is we're going to give him some nice cheeks with a dry brush of dragon fruit. It's a nice cherry color. So you need to find the brush you like to dry brush with. I use a Langnickel short round sable. It has some hair stuck in its barrel. Oh well, let's see. There we go. And let's get a little closer in on his face. Okay, so we're going to give him some nice round cheeks. And they're going to sit right here on top of the tops of his mouth. And you want to be sure it's your brush is dry, because you don't want these to be full-on bright blotches of dragon fruit. You want it to be some soft things. And as you see, I'm doing a big circle, and it's sitting right on top at the, it's like they're popped onto the points of his mouth. All right, like that. So we've already, we're going to put his little nose on, which sits right here under his, underneath his eyes. And those are just put on with little C-stroke floats of dragon fruit. Blend it out nice. And you're just going to do a little C-stroke float this way. And then you're going to flip your brush over and do the other side. So he has a cute little nose. So we are going to float some shading on our ghost with Moody Blue, which was this color, the color of the tag. And here again, there's going to be quite a bit of shading to do. So let's start. I'll start here on his head because I already have it blown up here. So I'm going to get a little bit larger brush. There it is. And I want to blend this out really well too. I don't want it to be real dark. And I'll start here. I'll just do a soft float right there to separate his face from that tail of his tip of his head. So then I'm gonna bounce around a lot here. I'm gonna go here, down the left side of his face. I'll stop when I get to his stethoscope. Let's also go from here. We're going to start at the top of his head and go across the top of the little tail that he has on his. So see, keep it nice and soft. I'm going to share with you one of my little secrets for floating. And what it is, it's a medium I use. And this cup is really dirty, but it works just fine. This is Winsor Newton Acrylic Flow Improver. And I use it for all my floating. It just gives me a little bit more open time on my paint. I can play with it. You notice I can dibby dab. And what this is it's a concentrate that you mix with water, and then you use it in place of clear water. So instead of putting your brush into your brush basin, you're going to load your brush with the flow improver, and then you're going to blot your brush out just like you do with a regular float. Everything else stays the same. Then you corner load and blend out. And this just helps me keep my floats a little bit softer, especially here. The weather has a lot of an effect on floats. They dry kind of fast. And also what happens is I can, if I can find my mop brush, I can do a float and then I can mop it and soften it. I don't have to put down a barrier of extender first and then float and then mop. I can just float and mop. So if you are having trouble floating, you may want to give this Winsor Newton Acrylic Flow Improver a try. Of course, I sell it on my website. You can buy it in a 2-ounce bottle. It's already pre-mixed. You just squirt it into a little jar lid or container and use it directly that way. Or you can buy the concentrate and make your own. Here in my area, the water has a lot of minerals in it, and so I use distilled water to mix up my flow improver, because then I don't have those little speckles attracting that. So Anyway, it's on my website. If you'd like to give it a try, I'd encourage you if you're having trouble with floating. Okay, so basically we floated, oh, I have one more place along the bottom of the tail on his head. So we basically floated all the way around this guy's head with Moody Blue, and I went ahead and floated above the stethoscope. So now I'm going to move him up a little bit, and let's work on this center section. And we're going to go, we are not going to go down these outside edges. We'll go a little bit, and then when we get down here to the bottom of his arms and his hands, we're going to float there. But we're kind of not going to go in this section right here. So again, blend it out really well. And let's go around his stethoscope. And this is where I'm going to pull it down just a little bit, but not all the way down his arm. So I'm just going to float all the way around that stethoscope. I had to look up the anatomy of the stethoscope so I'd know what these different parts were called. I'd also suggest if with your floating that you use a bigger brush. Maybe you're a size 10 or a size 12 flat floater. Try getting in there with a 16, and that you can blend your floats out a little bit more and soften them a little easier if you're using a bigger brush. So all the way around this little guy. Let's go here, starting in his armpit, and go all the way down and across the bottom of this arm. Okay? I'm going to say K a lot. It's my filler word. I try to avoid Let's do the bottom of his hand. So we're going to start up the side a little bit and come down. So it's kind of like a C stroke in the bottom of his hand. Let's see, I'm going to soften that a little bit. We're going to go in the crook, above the crook of his arm, and around his hand, because it's on top of his body. And then you can also go around the pumpkin. Oh, you can't see me. Sorry. Apologize. So I'm going around the pumpkin also. So I'm trying to keep these floats as soft as I can. Now here I'm just going to ignore where those little doodads that are in his pumpkin are, just so I can have in case something peeks through. Let's go down this side of the pumpkin. And then we're also going to go across the bottom of his hand. Reloading here. So I'm going to start probably up at his elbow and go across the bottom of his hand. And let's go over here. We are going to kind of go down this side of his body next to the crutch and across the top of this tail. So a little bit of shading there to do. I am going to turn this guy around just so it's easier for me to do that shade. So I'm going to start over here on the tail. On the other side of the crutch. And I'm going to come up, and it becomes a back-to-back float there, going up into his armpit. And let's go next to this crutch, and on the other side of the crutch. Okay, I think we are good there. So here we go. We got our little guy. Like I said, he's kind of big, so it makes it hard to get him to fit on here. All right. So we are going to deepen some of the shading, and if you have your directions out, it will tell you where we're going to do that. And we are going to do that with Deep Midnight Blue. And Deep Midnight Blue, you definitely want to blend this out really well. And for those of you who don't exactly understand what I mean by that, I will show you. When I want to soften a float that's with a dark color, what I do is let me get something for it to focus on. Let's see. Move the water ahead. Here we go. Here's my Deep Midnight Blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to corner load, and I'm going to blend. And normally you would blend right here in the same pile. But when I want to soften that float, what I do is I blend and walk away from that pile, so that I'm leaving more paint on my palette than I am in my brush. So what I want to do is I'm going to deepen the shading. Let's see, it says deepen the shading on the arms. So I'm going to go in his armpit a little bit and deepen that shading. I see a spot I missed with my Moody Blue. And I'm going to go across the bottom of his hand. I'm going to deepen the shading around the pumpkin. So what's going to happen is I'm going to kind of walk this color out in this V area here a little bit. So it's a little bit of a whiter float. Now I'm going to continue around the pumpkin because I really want that to pop off of him. Oh, golly gee. Sorry. So what I did is I floated here in his armpit. I'm going to make this a little bit of a V area here. And what I mean by that is I kind of widen the float there in the V. And let's go ahead and go around his hand. I didn't do it with Moody Blue, which I should have, but I missed it. But we'll do it with Deep Midnight Blue. It'll be good. Alright. I'm going to blend out some more. I'm going to go next to the crutch. I'm going to deepen that shading. And it's still soft, but it's a little bit deeper. Okay? Don't get carried away and do really, really, really dark floats here. I'm also going to touch just a little bit of this right in this little dent right there. This one I'm going to soften out. Let's go around the pumpkin. And what I did is I floated here and kind of deepened that V area a little bit. And then I'm going to continue on around this pumpkin with this softened deep midnight blue. I'm going to go under his arm and across the bottom of his arm. And I'm going to go here in the crook a little bit. I didn't go under his arm yet. Let's go ahead and do that. And let's go here to reinforce that. Here again you have a low V area, so you want to kind of walk that color out a little bit. And let's see, I think just a couple more places. I'm going to go above the stethoscope, but not all the way above. I'm going to start on the side a little bit and pull it towards the center. Just, I guess my husband decided this would be a really good time to vacuum. And then you also want to kind of touch it in here and there around the actual part of the stethoscope, the metal part down here. And you can do this just wherever you feel like you want a little bit more shadow. And I think I'm going to call that pretty good. All right. So we are going to go back to his face, and with a liner brush, I can find one, a whole mess of brushes here. I'm going to thin down a little bit of Moody Blue, make a wash. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line a shadow above each eye, and if you've painted with me at all with anything that has eyes, you know this is something that I do. So what I want to do is I want to start about halfway, 2/3 of the way down one side of the eye on the point of my liner brush, and then as I come across the top I flatten it out, make it wider, and then I come back to the point on the other side. So start on the point. As you come around the top, you flatten it out, and then come back up to the point on the other side. All right, let's get a little closer to this guy. We are going to do his little eyes, and what we're going to do is we're going to line a crescent-shaped stroke in the bottom of each eye with forest green. Don't need a lot. So a little drink. Gotta keep those fluids going. So forest green in the bottom of each eye. And what I like to do is I put put these strokes in, but I leave just a little hair of lamp black. I don't set them all the way down in the bottom. I kind of set them just above the bottom. So first I'm going to line that bottom line, so I'm sure to leave that stroke, and that's really hard to see, I know. And then I'm going to line the other one across the top, and then just fill in that stroke. And I don't even know that you can see that. Okay, so kind of slightly can see that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some Irish moss. Just need a little tidge. And you're going to pick up some Irish moss, and your brush can still be dirty or it can be clean. It's neither here nor there on that. And I'm going to line a little highlight through the center of this eye. There's like 3 little lines. And maybe you'll be able to see that a little better. Okay. So we're going to add some highlights to his eye. Let's add some warm white. You should have that on your palette. And he's going to have some highlights in the black part of his eye. So just, if you can do little strokes, that's great. If not, no biggie. And then you also want to tap just a little bit of this warm white down the center of the green part of his eye. He has some little eyelashes. And what you're going to do is you're going to thin down some lamp black, warm white eyelashes. That would be spooky. Again, with your liner brush, thin down that lamp black, and let's give him some little eyelashes. And I like to just kind of squiggle them on. And I'm going to give him some out here, and a little kind of notch right in the center corner of his eye. And let's give him some eyelashes here. And just a couple on the outside. All right. Now let's put some teeth in his mouth. And we're going to do that with warm white and a float. So he has 5 little teeth. So with your flat brush and a warm white float, start the corner lobe, you're just going to give him a few little teeth. They're kind of like squared off C strokes. And you can do as many teeth as you want. Just make sure it's an odd number. So I have 5 teeth. And now, if your float was a little heavier and you lost that black at the base of each tooth, you can come back when these are dry and do a very, very, very soft float of lamp black just to sink them back into his mouth. But I think we're good. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to come with a warm white float across the top of the mouth just to brighten that up a little bit. That's not in the directions. That's a little bonus for you. All right. Now he has some patches on his elbow and on his head. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint. I don't think I need to put the pattern in for those, but Purple Cow, which you should have on your palette, I'm going to put a little patch on his head here. And my mop brush was shedding. So there, he has a Purple Cow patch on his head. And then here, over here on his elbow, which for some reason I went ahead and put the pattern on, he has a Moody Blue patch. So let's put him, okay, that one's a little more curvy. So just a quick little patch. It doesn't have to be opaque. And we'll let those dry and come back to them in a few minutes. All right. So his stethoscope, let's work on that. Alright, so the tubing we've painted black, and the hardware we painted with slate gray. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to line a highlight on that tubing with warm white. So again, with your liner brush and some warm white, you want to thin down some warm white, and all you're going to do is very haphazardly, sketchy, skippy line some highlighting on this tubing. And it doesn't have to be one continuous line. Just get a little bit of highlighting on there. Don't forget this little piece down here. Right. So the flat edge of this piece is called the Conductor, in case you didn't know that. I accidentally painted it slate gray. So I'm just going to take my liner brush and some lamp black and paint over it with lamp black. Fixed. Okay. And so this little edge gets a warm white highlight too. And it's okay that it's still wet. You can just pull that highlight in there. If it doesn't get light enough to suit you, pick up some more warm white. There we go. It doesn't go all the way down, just like 2/3 of the way down. Alright, so we're going to line some highlighting, some more, with warm white. And this is going to be, we're going to do this. I have to turn him around, just because I want to make it easy on me for this part. And on this part, we're going to just take our liner brush and line across there like that to do a highlight. And let's turn him back around. Kind of gives it dimension already. And then I'm also going to line the chest piece, and this, just some little lines like that is great. And then what we're going to do is we are going to float shading on these gray parts with deep midnight blue. So just a very well blended out float. I'm going to go down the left side of the chest piece, and I'm going to go across the bottom of the conductor. Okay. I think that looks good. I think we can go back to our patches now. We are going to float shading on the sides of the purple patch with Diox Purple. So, nice little float. And we're just going to go down these sides. Don't have to worry about the bottom. Okay. On the Moody Blue one that's on his elbow, you're going to float shading with Deep Midnight Blue. It's kind of nice. We are working with colors that we already have out. Go across the bottom here and across the top. And now, to add some details, this purple patch has some dots, and I just painted them on with a thin down warm white. You want to make them kind of big so that you don't have to put so many on. And they're very faint, just a wash of warm white. And then with a little bit heavier warm white, you're going to add some stitching around the edge. So just some little stitches that are attaching it to the ghost. All right. And then the one on his elbow has some horizontal stripes with thinned white, warm white. So just very light little stripes. Or you can do whatever design you want. Stripes worked well for me. And then it too has stitching around it. Okay. Now the name tag. All these little details. Name tag, we're going to float shading on the outside edges with Deep Midnight Blue. We're going to paint his little name on with thin warm white. I want a little bit more paint in it than normal thin liner paint. And I named mine Dr. Boo. You can name yours whatever you like. So, just and then there's a little stripe that goes around the edge of the name tag, and it goes on the actual edge, and that's with burnt orange. And you can just do that full strength. So basically you just outline the name tag. See, I'm a little shaky. So we just needed to tie in this orange from the pumpkin another place on this piece. All right, moving right along. We are going to work on our crutch now. So I'm going to get it in there. So we are going to dry brush some highlighting on the brown part of our crutch with khaki tan. It's an oldie but a goodie. Don't need a lot. So all we're going to do is dry brush a little bit of a highlight on the wood part of this crutch. It's already starting to give it a little bit more dimension. Pick up a little bit more, lighten this up a little bit more. Nice. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to float shading and line some wood grain with burnt umber. Don't need a lot, it's not a very big crutch. Okay, so I'm going to float shading on the wood part of the crutch above the foot, the rubber foot. I'm going to go under the hand. Go above the hand. I'm going to go under the handle. I'm going to go on the center brace. So I'm going to wait and come back and do the other side. Let's do both sides of the top of the hand, the sides of the handle. Let's see. I may want to pull just a little bit more shading up here. And let's come back and do this on the side. Got a little heavy there. Some of it up with my handy dandy mop brush. Alright, so now the wood grain. We're going to take burnt umber and our liner brush, and we are going to just line some wood grain on here. Now I like to do knot holes, and the way I do that is I start pulling and stop, press my brush down, pull it back up, and that gives me a little knot hole. And then you always want to line on either side of your knot hole. But anyway, just some scraggly lines to add the look of wood grain. And you can add as many knot holes as you'd like. Okay. Now the rubber foot is painted with slate gray, so we're going to float highlighting on one side. I'm going to float highlighting on the left side with warm white, and then shading on the right side with deep midnight blue. So just a quick little float of warm white on one side, and then a quick little float of deep midnight blue down the other side. Alright, we can call the crutch done. We are going to move over to our pumpkin now. Move some stuff around so I can get it up here. I'm going to get a fresh piece of palette paper. I had worked on another project, so it was already kind of filled up. Alright, so let me see if I can get closer on that pumpkin. And I'm going to go way up there. Okay. So our pumpkin was painted with burnt orange. I put the pattern on for the face, but I didn't want to have you paint the face in because we need to do some dry brushing first. Alright, so I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on each of these sections with golden straw. Actually, I'm going to float highlighting too. I'm going to get out a little bit of golden straw, and I think I'll do the floating first. So blend out your golden straw, and as it goes on, it's going to look a little bright. It's okay, it tones down. So I always like to start on the outside edge and float down. And then I move over to the center section and float down. And then I go back to the other side and start. See, it's already toned down quite a bit. There we go. Alright, so we've got our shading, our highlighting floated on there. And now we're going to dry brush highlighting with golden straw. So I'm going to dry brush highlighting on each section through the center of this section. Okay. And let's go through the center of this guy. He's a little wider, so our dry brush is going to be a little wider. And then down this side. It's a little smaller, but you still want to get some dry brushing in there. And then you can wash your dry brush out. Now we are going to float shading on our pumpkin. First with Country Red. You don't need a lot. And this is how I do pumpkins. I always float shading first with a red, so that it kind of reds up in the pumpkin and gives it a little bit more depth. Because not depth. This is a technically correct pumpkin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to float on the side sections next to the center all the way down. Trying not to turn. Now you can turn yours to make it easier. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a little bit. Now we're going to float some more Country Red. What we're going to do is we're going to float it in the bottom of each of these sections. You don't want to just float across the bottom. You want to treat each section as its own piece. So I'm going to start a little ways up the side of the pumpkin, and I'm going to float in the bottom here. And basically fill up that V area. When you get to the center, you start about a little ways up the side. And this is like a C stroke float across the bottom there. And it comes back up the other side. And then our other section, other side, we do the same thing. We float it in the bottom and bring it up the sides a little bit. I'm also going to do that in the top. So yes, you do cover up some of your highlighting that you did, but it's okay. And then in the center, I'm going to start down the side just a hair, come across the top. Okay, now you're going to float shading again in all the places you just did shading with burnt umber. You should still have it out on your palette unless you change palettes like me. So every place you just floated shading with Country Red, you're going to float shading with burnt umber. So I'm going to go down these side sections. My red was a little wet yet, so I'm going to dry it a little bit. This is a great dryer. It's a Ranger heated craft gun. You can get them on Amazon. Just be sure you get the American one and not the European, because the plug will look weird and you won't be able to use it. Unless, of course, you're in Europe. Then you can go ahead and get the European one. But it dries stuff really fast. It's quiet. And as you can see, I've used it a lot. It's got paint all over it. So let's go down this side. You'll do a much nicer job, I'm sure. And get that off of there. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to go in the bottoms. Now you can still see a hint of that red in there. And so don't feel like you're wiping out that first float. And let's go across the tops. All right. Now I'm going to take just a little break, and I will be right back. All right, back again after a break. You'd be surprised how tiring just sitting here painting can be. Anyway, we've done the shading on our pumpkin, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put that handle on there, and there's a little edge across the top, and that's going to be with burnt umber. So all we're going to do is with our liner brush kind of flatten it out a little bit so that you get a little bit wider line. We're going to line just a kind of an edge across the top of this pumpkin basket. All right, and then also you want to line the handle. So I'll start. I'm still a little shaky. I apologize. I'm going to line that handle down. Very nice. Okay, cool. The next thing you want to do is line a highlight on that top edge and on that handle with a little bit of khaki tan. So all I'm going to do is, even though that line's still wet, that's all right. I'm just going to go through this center area with a little khaki tan, and then across the front of this, the little handle. Now we can go ahead and paint in the facial features with lamp black. Sorry. And you're also going to need golden straw and warm white. Sorry. So get out a little golden straw and a little warm white. We'll be all ready to go. All right, so let's go ahead and paint in those eyes and the mouth. He doesn't have a nose. If you want him to have a nose, you can give him one. Okay. Now he's starting to have some character. Sorry, my original fell on the floor. I always like to have it handy to look at. All right, cool. Now, I'm going to dry this a little bit. And what we're going to do with the golden straw is we're going to line the inside left edge and bottom of these features. So I'm just going to come down this side, the bottom. And the bottom. And then in the mouth, it's just going to be along the bottom left side. then we have a warm white highlight. You just do a little set down in there in each of the features. So there you go. That basket is done. What we're going to work on now are the little medical supplies. And so the hypodermic needle is country red. So you just want to paint that in. And there is just a little touch, a little drip of country red coming from the tip of the needle. So you want to add that little drip. And then the needle itself is just a thin little line of lamp black. There we go. You want to paint the little band-aids in. There are 3 of them with khaki tan. Get a little bit, well, I guess I'll just use that. Here. These are so small, it's easy to paint around the things in front of them. And then one more that comes out from behind the bottle. I don't know what's in the bottle. All right, well, let's go ahead and paint the bottle in with Irish moss. And then the cap is lamp black. All right, get that cap painted. And we'll dry those and get some shading and highlighting on those. Okay, let's go back to the hypodermic needle. I'm just going to pick up a little country red and then a little warm white to make a lighter value country red, a pink, and I'm just going to kind of line a little highlight on one side. And then I'm going to go over to the hypodermic needle, and you want to line a little highlight on it with warm white. And then you also want to line a little highlight on the lid of the jar with warm white. Okay. And then the Band-Aids, you want to float highlighting on the ends and then to also form the gauze, the center part that covers up the boo-boo. So we're going to float warm white at the end, and then it'll come down a little bit to form that center. So the end, I'm going to stop at the handle, and then the center, the end, and come down a little bit for the center of the Band-Aid. And then we're going to float highlighting on the left side of the bottle with golden straw. Okay. Dry that a little bit so we can come in and do our shading. You're going to need burnt umber and forest green. So I'm going to float shading with burnt umber on the Band-Aids next to that little center area that I made. And then you also want to float it on the Band-Aid to separate it from the other Band-Aid and across the bottom where it tucks into the basket. Okay. And then let's float shading on the bottle, on the right side of the bottle with forest green. You can go ahead and go under the lid and then down the left side. And go ahead and take it across the bottom of the bottle next to the basket. Lots of little details here. So with your liner brush and thin burnt umber, you're going to outline each Band-Aid. So a nice thin line, and you're going to line that center section and add some little dots. So a nice thin line to outline, and then some dots. Just to define them a little bit more. Get some paint on there. Okay. And now the X's, we need to bend some lamp black and put 3 little X's on the bottle. Or if you want to get really fancy, you could put a skull and crossbones, but I thought we put a lot of details on this already that we'll just go with X's. or parts of X's. Okay, I'm going to call that done. So let's work on these Band-Aids. They're relatively easy. You're going to float highlighting on either end, and to form this set. Ooh, I'm not even pointing at them. That's not good. Okay, so we're going to work on these Band-Aids along the side, and they're a little tedious, but they go relatively quickly. So you're just going to float some very well blended out warm white highlighting on either end and in the center to form that center cushy part. So just go through the whole thing. I like to go through and maybe float one side first and then come back and float the other side. And here's another one of those. I gotta turn my piece, try to keep it out of my paint. So I'm just going to float here, and I'm going to drop down and float there. And I'll do that all the way around, and then I will come back and do the other side. So again, I'll probably just put some music in here so I don't have to try to keep talking. Okay, so we got that done. I'm going to let those dry because we need to go back and float shading and add the little dots with dioxazine purple, but we can add the dots last so we can keep our fingers out of it. So the lettering that we've painted, let me see, there has to be an easy way. I'm going to turn this upside down just because then I don't have to roll my chair back so far. But what we're going to do is we are going to float some Irish moss across the top half of each letter. So blend it out, and we're just going to kind of get in here and float and tint the top half of each letter with this Irish moss. So I kind of liked this effect, and it was quick and easy. And having the stencil to put the initial first coat on for the lettering was nice. You didn't have to put a pattern on and base coat it. It was nice and easy. Okay, getting there. And you're going to do this to the smaller, skinnier lettering too, so it won't take as long. That just pops that lettering a little bit more. And let's do this little lettering here. Doesn't matter if you get on the background purple a little bit, it's not going to show too terrible much. Which you're probably saying, good, because I'm getting all over the background. If the skinnier lettering, if you wanted to do it with a liner brush, just so you feel more comfortable about it, that'd be fine too. Okay, cool. And then we're going to line a shadow to the top and left, which upside down is my right side, on the background next to each letter with some thinned, with a wash of Diox purple. So we can go ahead and get that done. And Diox purple is pretty strong, so you want to thin it down quite a bit. So in the directions it says top and left, if yours is upside down like mine, it's going to be bottom and right. So you just go through and line this shadow right next to and underneath this, each letter on the background. And that helps to pop those letters off the background too. So and if you paint anything of mine that has lettering on it, you're familiar with this. I do it to almost every piece of lettering I ever put on anything. I think I did that wrong, but it'll be okay. No, I did it right. So I turned it back around because I was confusing myself. So I'm going to do the top and left. And this won't take too long. But you can even do this on things that aren't my design. If you feel like the lettering just needs a little punch of something, try this. You might like it. Getting closer by the minute. You're going to do this on the skinny letters also. So once we get this done, we'll go back and work on our bandages and get them done. And please, as you're watching this either on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, feel free to comment, ask questions. I will keep an eye out for questions so I can answer them for you. Alright, almost time to get to those band-aids again. And you'll probably notice I totally forgot to put the directions in the pattern packet for the band-aids. So you may want to scribble it down at the bottom that you base those in Purple Cow, and you float highlighting with warm white, and you float shading and add the dots with Diox Purple. I apologize for leaving it out. Another testimony to how imperfect I can be. So let's get down here. We're going to float shading basically just next to that center area. So this will go much faster than the highlighting went. And now you can use a stylus if you want to add the dots, or just your liner brush. But what you're going to do is, with the Diox Purple, you're just going to go through and add some dots to the sticky part. And so it's going to take a little while. So I will fast forward through the dots. Or even better, I think you can handle dots pretty well. So I'm going to stop recording, and I'll be back in a minute to show you what's coming up. Okay, we have just a couple little things to add before we can call this done. There's a little like scars, or not a scar, a wound that's been stitched up over here. So with lamp black, you just want to paint that on there, and then line a little highlight on it with warm white. So just a quick little stitch there, and all you're going to do is just a little bit of warm white highlighting on that thing. And then we have the grass to do, so let's go a little whiter on that. And I just did the grass with forest green and Irish moss, and I just used a round brush, something I haven't used yet, this piece. And I'm going to stroke on the darker grass first. Let me find a round brush here, and this one will do. This is a number 5. You could use a 4 or 5, whatever. So just, oh cool. So just, you don't have to be real careful about this. Just stroke on with your round brush. Some grass along the lower edge there. Really so probably some of your nicest floats on that foot of the crutch you're going to cover up. And then I'm just going to go in with the round brush again and Irish moss and just stroke on some lighter grass. Probably not as much as you did the forest green. But just to give it some different color. I might like to make a couple of longer little things in there. Anyway, so there you go. Now we can call it done. Okay, just a couple of little tips. When this is all dry, I varnish mine with a couple of coats of spray varnish. And to store it, I would roll it up And if you have like a empty paper towel tube or something, or you can hang it, which is, I'm getting quite a collection of flags, so now I'm going to probably hang them in the closet. But yeah, and if it gets a wrinkle or a crease, you can always put a towel over it and iron it so it gets flat. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and for being so gracious about me having to cancel the original class. So coming up in January, we're going to be working on this little girl. Let me get her. So yeah, we're going to work on her. The original here is painted on an 8 by 10 by 1.5 inch canvas. You can use any surface you want. I would suggest that if you don't use a canvas as your surface, that you use a sponge roller to put your base coat of black on, just so that you'll have some texture, because texture is really cool here. And we're going to be doing some she looks like she's a lot of work, but she's a lot of dry brushing. And then you're going to need a pencil, regular number 2 pencil, not too sharp. So if you sharpen it and then kind of wear the point down a little bit, you're going to want to make a copy of the lettering that's in the pattern packet. And if you want to be ahead of the game, you can cut each word out a little square. Don't follow the shape of the lettering, but just put a rectangle around it. Okay? So, and you're going to need decoupage to apply that. I'm trying to think. If you have a little star stencil, that will come in handy. But the pattern packets, the prep, and of course a vellum tracing are available on my website on the meeting 4. And there goes the voice again. So I really look forward to painting her. She was fun to create. And then coming up in February, we have Zombie Coffee, which seems to be something you're liking. So, and this is a wood cutout with a cutout overlay, and you'll be pleased to hear the little zombie guy. The pattern is already scored on him, so you want to put the pattern on, but minimal prep. And this one should be fun. I'm almost out of the Shatter, Tim Holtz Shatter stencil, but I have more on order. So if you want to hang on for a week or two to order, that'd be fine, because then I'll have those back in stock. And then on February, March, I'm experimenting with these dollar store sunglasses. And so I'm giving you a heads up so you can go raid your dollar store. You want to try to get lenses that are kind of round, because we're going to be putting pumpkins on there, but we are also going to be playing with quick wood. Now, I am not an expert, so we're going to be working through this together, but I'm planning on using a little bit of quick wood to give these some dimension and interest. And so for that, you want to be on the lookout for some quick wood, those dollar store sunglasses with round a lens as you can get. And also I prepped them by using decoupage on the lenses. I gave it a couple coats of decoupage and then a couple of coats of burnt orange, but those directions will be out whenever I get them finished. You also want to make sure you have a good fast glue. I use Liquid Fusion. You could use Gorilla Glue or some other kind of quick glue. And I think that's about it for right now. I also have in the works, which means it's in my head, plans for a tote bag that your children or grandchildren can use as their trick-or-treat bag at Halloween, and some new surface shapes, a bat, and a couple of other things. So I'm looking forward to creating some more things for you. I'm so glad that you're enjoying this endeavor. And if you have ideas, suggestions, something you'd like to see, now I can't guarantee I'll do it, but if there's something you'd really like to have, just, you know, email me or something and we'll see what we can work out. It's not that I've run out of ideas. It's just that I want to paint things that you want to paint. So anyway, thank you again, and hopefully I will see you in January, which it's January 1st today. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you again for joining me.